Continuing on, let's talk about kids and their education. Choices abound, but even more so from the Independence Institute, Krista Kafer, who's done an incredible paper for us. I want to talk to you. And from the Donnell-Kay Foundation, Tony Lewis. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
All right, everybody knows about this. I want to talk about this. Donnell-Kay, what is the purpose of this foundation?
To improve and strengthen education in Colorado. Easy task.
Blah,
We'll
blah, blah,
be
blah,
done
blah.
next week.
Yeah. See, this is what I love about educrats, is that they can use words and words and words, and nothing actually comes out. What does that mean?
Improve education?
Improve education.
Surely you understand that, John.
No. Improve it by doing what?
Improve academic performance, improve kids getting ready to enter the job force, make a system that's not working well, work well. Hard to do, right?
Again, the educratic thing here. By doing what?
Okay. That's hard.
That's a tough one.
Hard, right? So we've been tweaking the system for a long time, right? To no avail.
Right.
It's not
All right, first of all,
changing.
let's start there.
Right.
The state of government-run education, public education, it's failing.
I think so. In many respects. There are bright points, but it's, you know,
and
is it hitting all cylinders? No.
And it is getting to catastrophic levels. Would that be
I think it's at catastrophic levels, right? I don't think it's getting there. I think it's been underperforming for a long time.
You don't disagree with
that?
that?
Well, I think there's kids that are doing well in it, and there's schools that are doing well, but you also have a lot of kids being left behind. And I want to say something about the Donnell-Kay Foundation. They have backed reforms such as blended learning, charter schools, and have been involved as a consultant in helping with a variety of projects that I looked at in that paper.
What, you looking for a job? Is that what's going on?
Actually, cash.
Easily
would be
gotten,
nice.
yes.
Okay. All right. But what you've been championing, and it seems so simple on one level, but kind of hard to get, is that we live in an age where we pick and choose the things that work for us. Right. We pick and choose the TV shows we want to watch on Netflix, so we watch them when we want to watch them. We go to the store, we buy this that works for us, and we don't buy that. But when it comes to education, it's as if we have to buy the whole package or none at all.
Right. So maybe a great transition to blended learning, right? So with blended learning, you're using technology to start to break apart some of that education and give kids a more personalized path. Krista's paper talked about that, laid out some great examples, I think 4 examples in your new paper, of districts that are doing really great work, customizing education for kids. And I think, so you can look at changing education at a systemic level, hard to do, we're not making much progress, and you can look at it at a classroom level, at a school level, and I think that's where we're seeing some progress.
So in other words, to put it in terms I could even understand, instead of changing the macro system of all, there are ways to have micro changes that can really help kids now.
Absolutely, in the classroom.
Now, and you've been working on this blended learning. Now, as a single malt Scotch guy, the idea of blended anything is bad.
It's bad.
But what is blended learning?
So blended learning is when you take technology and you blend it into the classroom. You allow kids to learn at their own pace, usually in their own time, in some way, either at home, could be in the lab, could even be in the classroom, through an electronic equipment. Usually it's an iPad or a computer. And so let's say that we're in a class right now. You could be working, the teacher could be working with Tony on upper level stuff. I could be working on, exercises on math on my computer, and then, the assistant could be working with the remedial student over here, yourself.
Thank you.
And so by having something that we can all work at our own pace and catch up and move together, ultimately towards one goal, that's what blended learning is.
This sounds a little bit like the Montessori model. Am I right on this? That kids would kind of do their own thing and not all do it at the same time at the same place.
Kind of, but not so much Montessori, right? What you're allowing teachers to do is what they've always tried to do, and some well and others not, is differentiate their instruction, right? So if you have a class of 20 or 30 kids, how do you ensure you're reaching all those kids who are at all different levels? So how can you have some kids grouped together by ability that you're working with individually? 4 or 5 or 6 students. How can Krista work with a group of students that may be accessing some online content? And how can another group of students move at their own pace using some computer programs and on their iPad or on their laptop? So how do you break that classroom
So this whole
up?
model of teacher in front of blackboard teaching everybody, which meant that they really had to go down to, I hate to say the lowest common denominator, the kid like me.
Yeah.
And but the kids that could excel at a faster rate, well, they couldn't because they had to wait for everybody else.
They're
so
bored.
You had 30 kids who had to kind of go at the same level, and there were people who who were stressed out because they weren't getting it, and then you had people who were bored.
Because you're teaching to the average, right?
All right, bring in the technology, because I get the idea that you might have different teachers working with different kids and more on an individual level, but explain the technology part.
The technology is getting very advanced. So we've got both computers and iPads type equipment in the classroom. We also have a lot of software that allows students to move at their own pace, that tracks their pace. They even has sort of embedded tests to see how they're doing. Are they able to pick up on these skills? Do they need to revisit some skills? It's getting to be very, I would say, fine-tuned and advanced. And a lot of times this will go on in the classroom, it may go on in a computer lab, or kids may actually take their iPad home. They could even, listen to a pre-recorded lecture. They could work on a practice piece through a piece of software. It's exciting what's available out there.
This sounds like a real pain for a teacher. If you're a teacher, you've got your class plan. I've worked on my class plan. Once you have a class, you can use that class plan for the next 30 years if that's what you're teaching. But now you're telling me, no, you got 20 kids, 30 kids, and you're going to have to try to play air traffic controller with all of them on these different things using those technologies.
That was my first thought. My first thought was this could be a little crazy, and if it's done poorly, it is a little crazy. But when it's done well, teachers have told me it's like they cloned themselves. Instead of having one teacher trying to work with all 30 kids, they now feel like they've got a sort of a second teacher working one-on-one with kids throughout the classroom. That's how advanced the software has gotten.
And how comfortable people have gotten, teachers have gotten with using that technology, right? It's a new thing.
Yeah, maybe it's us old people, you and me, not Krista.
Oh, thank you.
You need to program your VCR. You got to find somebody.
A 13-year-old,
if they know what a VCR is any longer. But these kids are much more tech savvy than the people who are teaching them.
Right, digital natives, right, is the common term now for kids.
Digital natives?
Sure, because they grew up with technology. We didn't.
That's all they've ever known.
Right.
All right. Are there any places, you said some do it well, some do it poorly, just like anything else, and trying new things is difficult. Give me an example of where it's working, or can you show me a school that's doing well and give me some texture.
So in the first paper that I did for the Independence Institute, it was I kind of did a scatter shot, different classrooms around the country, around Colorado. In this next paper, I used 4 districts, because what I liked is that the 4 were doing different things, but they were doing them well. I looked at Greeley Evans, that is. I looked at St. Vrain. I looked at a consortium of 14 districts in the San Luis Valley, and I looked at the Falcon District. Each one was doing things differently, but what I liked is there was a lot of planning and forethought, and it wasn't haphazard. It was something that met district goals and individual classroom goals. It was something that was very well thought out.
Is this all in charter schools? Or
no.
Yeah.
These are regular public schools, regular districts. Now, I did, in the first paper, I looked at a couple of charter schools, like Odyssey Charter School and others that were doing it at just the school level. But when it's at a district level, you've got a level of planning that can take place where you're looking at the technology, the professional development, the manpower. It's just a lot more, researched and predetermined. And so I think they leave a lot of the room for error out in doing it that way.
All right. Whenever there is change in education, or it looks like there might be something that is more directed towards what parents think is best for their kids, there is a wall called the unions that seem to fight it all the way. No matter what, charters 20 years ago was the end of the world, and now we've seen that 13% of all kids in Colorado go to a charter school. Choice programs like they're doing in Dougco now are, we've got to sue, we can't let those new innovations happen. I'm assuming there's going to be resistance to this. Am I right or am I wrong on this?
I think you're wrong. I think you're wrong on the organizational level. I think there's going to be resistance. There's always resistance to change, right? On an individual teacher level, some teachers will embrace it, some teachers will resist it. And I think, as you even said, some of the older teachers might resist it more and some of the younger teachers might embrace it more. But it's not, it's how it's done, right? If a school or a district says, we're all going to do it and it's all going to look this way and you all have to implement tomorrow, you bet there will be resistance. I think what we've seen so far is that most teachers in the schools want to do it. And they embrace it, and they're excited about it because it actually makes them better, and they're reaching their kids, and that's what we're seeing.
Oh, you're shaking your head.
Hey,
teachers want to do this.
It's
Again,
true.
I can't get my brain around that. it seems like a whole lot more work to individualize it.
Not in the end, right? At the start, maybe.
At the start, maybe. But here's the thing. I talked to teachers that had been around a long time. These weren't newbies, and they loved it. I talked to new teachers that loved it. And what I liked about these 4 districts is that in the beginning of the process, they allow those innovative teachers that want to do this to take the lead. So they don't go into a school and say, hey, all of you are going to do this. They go in and say, which of you want to do this? And allow those teachers to take the lead, and they provide professional development then to give them the expertise that they need to move forward. But we're asking a lot of our teachers right now. They got to track student achievement. The expectation is that we bring all kids up to a certain level. There's already these expectations. What they need is a way to do that, and blended learning, if done well, can be that way.
All sounds wonderful, just terrific. Let's get down to brass tacks.
Yeah.
Is it working when it comes to what kids know? And even that becomes an argument because we have standardized tests, and every fight over standardized tests is the wrong way to measure. And how do you measure it? Well, you can't do it this way, and you can't do it that way.
And how do you find causality?
And heaven forbid, you cannot measure student achievement by parental satisfaction because parents are not equipped to understand that kind of stuff. So how do you measure the success of blended learning?
It's a tough one. I think you can measure it some by the culture of the school and how well that is working. I think you can measure it some by parental satisfaction and student satisfaction. I think you can measure it some through academic performance. I think it's harder. I think it's a little bit harder to make it a causal. What is one thing and the only thing that you're changing in a school in a year? There isn't one. You're changing many things. You're changing a teacher, you're changing an aide, you're changing the program, you're changing the curriculum, you're adding blended learning. Assigning causality, tough to do.
But you can look for association. And if you bring in blended learning into a classroom and then for a couple of years after that, those kids are showing greater gains than the kids before them, I think you can say, well, maybe this is what's making the difference. There was a RAND study, RAND Corporation last year, that showed that just using a couple of classrooms in a very controlled way, they were able to show some improvement from blended learning. So I think it's promising. Is it proven? No.
Less than a minute here. Let me play myself for a second. I want to save money. Everything requires a tax increase. You can't do anything because these poor kids, they need it. You can't make change without tax increase. Does this cost more?
Up front, you've got costs in technology, professional development, and software. In the back part, though, once these things are in the school, yeah, you do have some maintenance, but it can actually save money because you can actually have that computer be sort of like a second teacher in the classroom.
Mm-hmm. We've seen charter management organizations save enough money that they can plow that money either back into the classroom or build facilities. They can save money in the long haul.
Is this thing going to take off on its own, or does it need people to push it?
It's taking off on its own, and it would help for people to push it.
Tony, thank you so much. Krista, thank you so much. If you're interested, go to the Independence Institute website. That's independenceinstitute.org. Click on education, and we'll see you next week.